got infected with those sin thingies?
Charmed Season 3. Depending on the day, it's joint with 4 for being my favourite, or even sometimes overtaking 4 just slightly, since it doesn't have characters being tortured painfully towards the end. Rather, it has them being tortured for comedic effect.
Watch the remote!
No.
Sin Francisco is named, of course, because the episode is all about sin. 7 of them, actually.
I know how sin warps human desire.
The sisters come across a mortal called Lucas, who became a demon when he was destroyed by his own sin. And now his gimmick is that he can infect people with the 7 deadly sins, and their self-destruction will give him possession of their souls. He needs to infect 7 people, and 7 paragons of good at that. So that means the 3 charmed ones, their white lighter, a millionaire philanthropist, a pastor, and, wow, portraying a cop as a paragon of good.
Oh, Quint!
And that's actually it. No B-plots, just this main storyline and how it affects all 4 protagonists.
I'll save the innocents, I'll vanquish the demon, and if I feel like it, maybe, when I'm done, I'll save you guys.
I have loved this episode ever since I first saw it because I have been obsessed with its theme for most of my life.
If you're a paragon of good, how do you get corrupted?
Because no one is immune to sin.
The 7 deadly sins are, of course, a staple of Christian teachings, and while they aren't specifically mentioned in the Bible, they're an accepted part of the faith. And in Dante's The Divine Comedy, they were each assigned a different terrace on Purgatory Mountain for those who repented to be purged of their sins before getting to the good place, pride getting the worst punishment and lust getting the lightest. They were definitely enjoying a bit of mainstream popularity by the late 90s and early 2000s, thanks to David Fincher's neo-noir masterpiece Seven, about a serial killer basing each of his victims off the sins.
Cut off her nose to spite her face.
And who knows, maybe this is the reason Lucas keeps his sins in a box?
What's in the box?
My introduction to them was the Magnum ice cream brand having a flavour based on each sin. Envy was the nicest. There's also a lesser-known list of corresponding heavenly virtues, which the episode utilises but doesn't draw attention to.
It's a sense. We must have gotten rid of them.
Wait a minute, you said there was no magical way to do that.
There isn't. Maybe there's a human way.
Starting with Piper, she gets infected with gluttony, which is a sin that's often misunderstood or reduced to just eating too much. But what makes gluttony different from simply getting the munchies from time to time is that it's specifically overconsumption.
How did I get gluttony? I don't overeat.
No, but you overdo.
There's taking more than your share and also being wasteful. So while Piper does indulge in things like chocolates and drinking champagne in the middle of the day, the real gluttony comes in how she orders in all these luxuries for herself that she doesn't need. She also doesn't use them or care about them once they're there, and focuses on consuming more. She also uses the Book of Shadows to make sure they're delivered instantly so she can consume more quickly, without a thought to the personal gain backfire.
That is so personal gain.
No, because we need all of this stuff.
And medieval church leader Thomas Aquinas outlined 5 forms of gluttony, one of which is consuming too soon, along with too expensively and too eagerly. So this episode is actually pretty close to the original definition of gluttony, which is distinct from greed, and the businessman at the start was infected with that.
Gotta have more.
The way that it corrupts Piper is interesting because she is very much the opposite.
I like taking care of him and cooking for him and dressing up for him.
She plays hostess for things like a homeowners meeting, likes making elaborate meals for other people, and would fuss over everyone else to help them rather than herself. And gluttony's corresponding heavenly virtue is temperance, which Piper demonstrates in the last part of the episode.
You gotta go downstairs and heal Phoebe first and then go find Prue because the demon took her.
Expelling the sin by ignoring all her destroyed possessions and her own injuries, and trying to get Leo to heal Phoebe, who needs his help the most.
By you caring more about your sisters and me caring more about you, we overcame it.
Phoebe gets infected with lust, which is another misunderstood sin. It's not just finding someone attractive, but an insane desire for pleasure. Theoretically, it could cover all forms of pleasure, but obviously this is what gets the most airplay.
Prue won't let me leave the house, so I have to make do with what I have.
Get your slutty hands off of my husband!
It's usually the odd one out in terms of being portrayed as something that inspires the sin rather than embodying it. For example, Seven's lust victim is the person being lusted after rather than the one doing the lusting. Charmed, however, not only has Phoebe in a pretty modest outfit by her standards, but focuses more on her own inappropriateness, like making a pass at one of her professors when she's threatened with an incomplete, or trying to hook up with a cop in the middle of a hostage situation. And notice that before she's infected, she turns the cop down.
I'm seeing someone.
I'm not surprised.
Lust-infected Phoebe doesn't care about the boyfriend she loves dearly. And before we segue to her heavenly virtue, I want to reinforce the point I made in my series-wide video that Phoebe is not the slutty one that everyone loves to brand her as.
You'll always be freebie.
It's actually Prue and Paige who cycle through the most guys on their time on the show. Prue even dumping Justin just for being too boring, and Paige making this joke.
Handcuffs. From last Friday.
Phoebe, meanwhile, is much more sensual. She's the type who would want a man for the long term. And as much as she insists early on that she didn't see herself as the marrying type, she soon proves that she is most definitely that type. She wants one person to be with forever, and him to be the only one to see her sensual side. And that isn't lust, which is how the sin corrupts her.
Does he really love me, or is he just interested in my charms?
Lust's corresponding virtue is chastity, whose original definition was closer to monogamy. So basically, staying true to your partner. I suppose technically that's what Phoebe does to expel the sin, since by jumping in front of a gun for Piper, she is rejecting that cop and the chance to get with him, thereby honouring Cole somewhat. And before we move on, let's just appreciate the cuteness.
Hi.
Next up is Leo, who gets infected with sloth.
I think I'm gonna orb upstairs to take a nap.
Now, this isn't what modern hustle culture touts as laziness. We call that the basic human necessity of sleep and rest. Sloth is more like being late to meet your friends because you couldn't drag yourself out of bed, or turning a blind eye to the suffering of others. Cynicism is covered under the umbrella of sloth too because it's considered a moral laziness.
When you look for the bad in mankind expecting to find it, you surely will.
Sloth's corresponding virtue is diligence, and Leo forgets about his nap when he sees an injured Piper and instinctively wants to heal her. The businessman gets greed, which we see in his desire to constantly have more, even being willing to die for it. The pastor gets envy, which isn't just being jealous, but rather hatred of others for having things you want, and being willing to ruin them over it.
I just want to talk.
I just want my Jack.
The cop gets wrath, which is misnamed as anger here, and like in Power Outage and Hell Hath No Fury, a distinction is drawn between healthy and unhealthy anger.
Especially when the burning rage saps you of all your strength and reason, and the relentless scream blots out all hope.
Because wrath is the destructive kind that sets out to cause harm, as demonstrated by this guy turning the gun on himself once he's done smashing up the manor. So then we get to Prue.
He needs medical attention. The pastor inside, I kicked his ass. He needs attention too. He's knocked out.
Oh my lord, is Shannon Doherty just fantastic in this episode or what?
You lose, I win.
Given the creative frustration she said she felt by season 3, this must have felt like a fun chance to let her hair down and play with Prue's usual super witch persona.
Well, I didn't get hit.
Oh, I saw you get hit.
No, I must be strong enough to fight it off. I'm not showing any symptoms, am I?
So yeah, Prue gets infected with the sin of pride, and it's the one with the most interesting twist.
Wait, your sin? I thought you didn't get hit. Well, that was the pride talking, and it almost got me killed already.
She continues to save the day and rescue innocents, but all for, as Piper describes it,
For the greater glory of Prue.
And Lucas calls pride
The one sin you can't beat.
So it's impossible for Prue to expel the sin, because any selfless thing she did would just be showing off how selfless and altruistic she is, which is another form of pride.
I've never seen you run away from danger before, but I've never seen you run toward it either. What, have you got a death wish or something?
And pride was said to be the very worst of the sins, and the one that corrupted Lucifer into becoming the devil himself. And considering that Prue would often be put on a moral high ground compared to the others, with a lot of the episodes still allowing her to come out on top somehow or get a win anyway, she gets absolutely none of that here. Because pride's good counterpart is humility.
Wow, we sure showed that demon. Okay, you guys sure showed that demon.
And stepping outside of the sin theme for a moment, this is yet another Season 3 episode that reinforces how Prue shouldn't be so reckless all the time and not obsess about hunting evil. And while Shannon says she was pushing for Prue to be killed off, she also said that no one thought she was actually going to leave, so this kind of writing could just be coincidental. But whatever the case, it serves to make Prue's eventual death in All Hell Breaks Loose feel like a natural conclusion to her story. And in terms of how the episode itself is made, I was always struck by how San Francisco seems like it'll be a straight-up comedy episode like Chick Flick, where the stakes are minimal, but then Lucas infects the cop with anger and things get very serious.
I got suspended because of you!
In a lot of ways, this scene in the manor is a bit tough to watch because of how the tone shifts.
You think you ruined somebody's life? Not pay for it? Well, you're gonna pay.
But I guess it's an effective way of showing how the sins do eventually corrupt the souls completely. And it's probably just the softie in me talking, but I really feel for this poor guy. In the wrong place at the wrong time, gets suspended and then used by a demon, and will probably remember this incident once the sin is removed. Same for the pastor. Maybe the comics could do a thing on all the surviving innocents who remember being magically messed with, and how it affected their lives afterwards. Oh, and a fun bit of trivia. Sins have long been associated with a specific colour. Purple for pride, blue for sloth, orange for gluttony, and red for wrath, which are exactly the colours that everyone gets hit with. The pastor infected with envy likewise wants a green car. Phoebe is the odd one out, as Lust is more traditionally coloured blue, and she gets the more modern variant of pink, for obvious reasons. But I think that's all we can say about the episode featuring the
sin thingies!
But what more need be said?
I'll drink to that.
Season 3 is probably the best of the seasons for that comfort watch feeling, where the stakes feel reasonably high, but you know there's no danger of any curveballs or unwanted shakeups to the status quo. Until the finale, anyway. And having recently come off a video where I outlined what I didn't like about Season 2, Season 3 feels like a breath of fresher air, because Season 2 does have quality episodes, but Season 3 just has more. The production values, the writing, the direction, the performances, and just about everything keeps getting better. Even the B and C tier episodes are of such good quality.
Oh, you need a little time out, Missy.
This season hits the sweet spot of the sisters enjoying being powerful, badass witches, and essentially close to being on top of the world before they start having to deal with loss on a more regular basis. And right here we have a good little story with a fun theme and surprisingly in-depth research into its concept, and giving the cast a chance to be a little sillier for a while.
Leo needs suits.
Leo doesn't wear suits.
Yet.
But now, of course, I'm going to spend way too much time wondering which sin Lucas would probably infect me with. It's a toss-up between sloth, envy, or pride.
Even you?
Yes, even me. Just a teeny little bit. Nothing that anyone would notice but me.